I discovered my wife, Lisa, was not visiting her parents as she claimed, but was in a hospital in Boulder, severely burned and unfaithful. The shock of her betrayal and the wildfire that nearly took her life gripped me with a mix of anger and concern. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Alex discovers that his wife Lisa has been meeting her ex-boyfriend in Boulder, Colorado, instead of visiting her parents as she claimed. After finding out about her affair and devastating wildfire in Boulder, Alex suspects that Lisa might be in danger. He learns about her severe burns and hospitalization through voicemails and phone calls. As Alex copes with the situation, he faces confrontations with Lisa's family and ex-boyfriend's wife. Eventually, Alex's wife dies due to a heart attack, and he decides to scatter her ashes in a national park while taking his daughters to Disneyland. Alex awoke to find that his phone had 10 missed calls and the same number of voicemail messages. He did not identify the area code. After multiple encounters with Chinese robocall spam, he had programmed his phone to route unfamiliar calls to voicemail. Usually Beijing Daddy did not leave messages. His daughters weren't awake yet, so he began listening to the messages. That's when he discovered that his wife Lisa was not in Jacksonville, Florida, visiting her parents and sister for the weekend, as she had claimed. Instead, she was in a burn unit at a hospital in Boulder, Colorado. Alex stopped for a second. His phone was sending him news alerts. Normally it was bothersome, but it never seemed worth the effort to disable this feature. Something about fire stuck in his mind. When his phone screen went up that morning, he noticed a news article with the words "Fire in Boulder." He turned to his phone's home screen and noticed the headline "Devastating Wildfire Destroys Boulder Suburb Overnight." Interesting, Alex would confess that he wasn't always the smartest tool in the shed, but he could only think of one reason why his wife fled in their 7th year of marriage. She would lie about where she planned to spend the weekend. He carefully lowered his pace. There was no point in hurrying. He made coffee. The girls wouldn't get up for another hour. He took the coffee to his wife's office in the dining room and picked up her laptop. It came out that it was now protected with an unfamiliar password, but Lisa was forgetful and slow, so he sought for the password written on a scrap of paper and discovered it at the bottom of a drawer of a small writing desk. When he obtained access, he saw she had not even closed her email browsers. She had just turned off her computer, relying on her new password and trusting that Alex would not invade her privacy. Alex realized that all of the assumptions that had existed in this household up until this morning were no longer valid, and it was true everything had changed. She had been meeting her ex-boyfriend from college, Daniel Brown, at his Boulder home on weekends when Daniel's wife was away. This was the man who had destroyed Lisa's heart by falling in love and marrying another lady. He appeared to have felt some guilt over abandoning Lisa over time. Or was it simply lust? The emails contained few details, simply confirmations of arrival timings. Alex assumed they poured out their souls to one another. On the phone, one intriguing fact surfaced. Her parents and sister were aware of the situation and agreed to cover up her affair.
This was mentioned in the open chats rather than emails.
Everyone thought she should have married Daniel, who came from a wealthy family. Alex was completely astonished, as if he were seeing a car accident in slow motion and couldn't take his gaze away. He took a big breath and calmed down a little. He needed it. Otherwise he might have punched holes in the house's drywall. He phoned the hospital in Boulder. When the operator responded, he instantly inquired whether Joe Daniel Brown was a patient. When asked about his relationship with Mr. Brown, Alex said that he was a friend. The operator then stated that she could not provide any information. This statement clearly indicated that they had a patient called Daniel Brown. Alex then dialed the number left on his voicemail. It was a direct route into the hospital's admissions department. After he identified himself, the clerk informed him that Lisa had been admitted with third-degree burns covering more than 80 of her body, as well as lung damage from smoke inhalation. The fire appears to have started unexpectedly in a drought-stricken area, spreading rapidly due to high winds and shutting off the sole escape path. Over 100 homes had been torched and damaged. "Sorry," said Alex. "This cannot be my wife. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. You must have the incorrect information." He hung up. Yes, of course she was in Boulder. He felt it. But he wasn't about to make it easy for anyone. He looked at his wife's computer again and discovered Daniel's social media page. Lisa had actually added him as a buddy. There he discovered Daniel's wife. She had tweeted online from her family's home in San Diego asking for prayers after learning that her husband had been hospitalized with terrible burns sustained in a fire. It was time to seek answers from the God of vengeance. Alex reasoned as he messaged Daniel's wife in the chat to identify himself and convey what he had learned. He left his phone number. A while later, after finishing his coffee, he noticed another missed call. He didn't know the phone number, but there was a voicemail from Daniel's wife. "Emily," Alex called her back. "Mrs. Brown, are you truly called Tina?" "You had to ask, yes," she said with a sigh. "Why, I married him. I was constantly concerned that this might happen to the woman Daniel had rejected. I got married for love. Now it's a complete disaster. You must be our wise hubby." "Yes, when Daniel and I first met, I was already aware of her. He's been acting strange lately, but I did not understand why. Now everything becomes sense." "Are you experiencing the same thing?" "Pretty much. I was aware of Daniel, but Lisa was so quiet that I didn't notice anything." "Alex, you are handling this extremely calmly. How are you handling that?" "You two are speaking gently. I am taking medications." Emily stated that Daniel is severely burned. "They have already placed him in a medically induced coma." I lost my cool when I heard that. Now I'm just in shock, especially knowing the truth about what actually occurred. "What about your wife's situation?" "She's been terribly burned. That is all I know. I told them it couldn't be her because my wife lives in Florida." Emily chuckled. "Oh, the hospital's phoning again. Let me respond and let's stay in touch." She hung up and Alex stored her phone number in his contacts to prevent the spam blocker from sending the call to voicemail. Her wife's father, Michael, had called again. Michael must have noticed the news and become concerned. "Yes, Alex." Yes, there was a pause. Michael disliked Alex and Alex responded. Yet they always maintained a polite demeanor. Michael no longer cared about being nice. "Alex, had you heard from Lisa?" Alex paused. This question must have been difficult for Michael to ask. Morally speaking, why should I hear from her? Isn't she upstairs in her old room, spending time with you, your obstinate wife and your other foolish daughter? Michael realized that Alex was aware. He exhaled. "Alex, she truly loves you. I understand we've never gotten along." Michael, Alex interrupted, his voice becoming louder. "That is pure rubbish. And before you continue to upset me further, understand this. I always knew you didn't like me. You were certain I wasn't suitable for your daughter. But Daniel was your wife, and that her daughter similarly treated me as a sneaky intruder. I endured it to keep the peace. But that's over. Let me make this clear. If you were standing in front of me right now, I would do things to you that you cannot imagine. Following that, I deal with both of those women only for amusement. So you and your lying damn family, you sad damn bastards." Alex hung up. There was nothing else to say. To save time, he blocked Michael's phone number as well as those of his mother and sister-in-law. "Dad, why are you shouting?" his daughter Nicole inquired as she entered the kitchen. Her younger sister Sarah followed her. Sarah declared Daddy said a bad word. "Really?" Nicole asked. "Say it again." "Dad, I did not hear it." Alex needed to smile. "What was the terrible word?" Becky? She frowned. "I can't recall." "You must have misheard now. Let's eat breakfast. Today is pancake day. Each person will have 3 pancakes and some orange juice." Then the two girls watched cartoons after all. It was Saturday morning. They enjoyed Bubble Guppies. Alex hopes that these cartoons led to something more serious, such as Pinky and the Brain or Phineas and Ferb. The telephone rang again. It was Emily Brown. The tablets are not working. What the pills? I told you I was going to calm down. Well, you McCudgley sighed. They're not working. Why are you saying that Miss Emily Brown is at the hospital? They referred me to the ICU where Daniel is. The nurse put me on speakerphone, believing it might help Daniel hear my voice, even if he's in a coma. And then I lost it. I yelled that his partner had also been severely burned and would most likely die, and that it was his responsibility. I mentioned this after you and I both received our life insurance benefits. We'd go on a round-the-world cruise and spend the entire time having sex with each other until we were numb, simply to get even. His heart almost stopped when he heard me, even if he's in a coma. Yes, it's difficult to know whether my ranting triggered it or if it was a coincidence, but he made it through. I apologize. She paused. Sorry for what? Sorry that his heart almost stopped, to be sorry that he's still living. Alex's inclinations leaned toward brutality, but he restrained himself. Just sad. It came out this way. I agree. He paused before asking, tell me about the cruise we are going on. Sorry. I'm not sure where that came from. Still, I'm curious. I believe you. Or she paused. Are you actually interested? Alex. I noticed on social media that you had a lovely face, but I didn't follow you attentively. If I had to spend time seeking retribution by having sex with someone, you'd be a fine pick. Why are you asking? Do I have a chance? I do not know, she responded slowly. It's just that since I discovered he was cheating, I've spent a lot of time thinking what's wrong with myself. Knowing you're interested helps me feel a bit bad. By the way, you do not look that bad, Alex chuckled. Thanks. It's good to hear. Even though my wife plainly favored your husband. Perhaps the problem isn't us. That is something I'm beginning to consider as well. Emily Brown halted again. Have you ever pondered why they did this? I think it was because they believed they could have sex on the side and get away with it. That sounds very straightforward. So what else could it be? Emily replied strongly. Listen, we both have a lot to process, but let's keep in touch. We are the only two people who understand how the other is feeling right now. All right, I need to buy Bermuda shorts and swim trunks for the cruise from Amazon. She giggled. At least you're helping me feel better. Maybe the drugs work. After all, book a sea cab with a balcony. She giggled again. Goodbye. They hung up. Alex noticed that he had another voicemail. It was the hospital again. He called again and was connected to a nurse in a wise room. She also set him to speakerphone. It must have been a different nurse than the one who cared for Daniel, but they all appeared to follow the same set of industry medical norms. Mr. Henry Becker. Yes, I'm Nurse Young. We're on speakerphone right now. I'm in the burn unit, intensive care. Your wife is here. She's terribly burned and medically induced coma. She is next to me. We hope the sound of your voice can help, even though she is unconscious. Alex suspected that following today, the hospital would need to revise its usual procedures for dealing with a patient's family. But he had to ask, why do you suppose I wasn't present when she was brought in? My co-worker was. She stated that your wife grasped her hand strongly and refused to let go until they understood what she was requesting. Call my spouse. I'm so sorry. Your wife battled the team with all of her strength and refused to let them do anything unless they convinced her that the message would be delivered. Okay. Too late. Alex reflected on this. What do I say? He asked, say everything your heart desires. The nurse spoke foolishly. Okay, thought Alex. It's game on. Listen, you sad cheat. Filthy monster. He yelled into the phone at his wife. I pray you die in misery and spend forever in hell beside Daniel, who will also perish. Just so you know, I'm going to use all of Daniel's life insurance money to seduce his wife. I'll never forgive you." The call went dead. The nurse must have been distracted at first, but she seems to have snapped out of it. Alex knew that this wasn't the way to achieve peace of mind. He might feel guilty one day for expressing all of this, but not today. "Daddy, what does seduce me?" asked Becky, hugging her teddy bear. "My young ones are. Oh, it implies to deceive somebody." She thought about it with a serious expression. "When will mommy be home?" This is what made him so angry, the desire to explain to his girls what was going on. He should have considered it thoroughly, but he wasn't in the mood. "Becky will respond as soon as she is able." Becky returned to the living room. Alex watched her sit down in front of the television. He was not going to take the daughters to Colorado to see their mother shrouded in bandages like a mummy. He did not want them to have such kinds of memories. 30 minutes later, he had ordered Disneyland tickets for a week, a reservation for one of Mickey's hotels. There are also airplane tickets. They were departing the following morning. Nicole might have to miss some of her kindergarten classes, but that was fine. The hospital called back just as he had received the tickets. Lisa was alleged to have died of a heart attack. Despite all attempts to rescue her, Alex inquired as to when the incident occurred. It was precisely when he had yelled at her. Perhaps he urged Emily to try yelling at Daniel again. No, allow her to handle it herself. Finally, Alex had to provide a wise medical insurance information to the hospital so that they could give the death certificate. He called the local funeral home and scheduled her cremation with Burns. Alex expected a discount, but they told him they would charge the full fee. He asked them to mail him the ashes after they returned from Disneyland. The girls were disappointed that their mother was not with them, but they cheered up with loads of treats from the Baby Michael boutique. Daniel held on until Thursday. Emily stopped yelling at him, which may have helped him cling on. Emily returned to Colorado following his death and stayed with friends because her house had burned destroyed. She informed Alex that she acted like a noble widow to her children. She did not inform them about Lisa. Emily's children were older than Alex and they knew their father had been injured in the fire, making it difficult to overlook anything. Alex's girls had no notion. He was going to carry on as usual for a while, even yet it was difficult not to speak negatively about their mother. Shortly after they returned from Florida, a delivery man arrived at the door with 2 goods that required signatures. The first one was a letter from her relatives. The second package contained Lisa's ashes. The letter requested our wise remains so that they may hold a memorial service and funeral in her hometown of Florida. If Alex didn't want to make arrangements where he resided, they must have called someone. He realized the letter didn't include any apologies for covering for Lisa. This fact made his subsequent decision easier. He hired a teenage girl from the neighborhood to babysit and left. The girls were telling the babysitter about their Disney trip, including showing off their new belongings and images on the tablet. Alex then drove to a nearby national park carrying Lisa's ashes in a sack over his shoulder. Alex went to one of the park's remote regions. Instead of restrooms, it had cinder-block pit toilets. He snapped a photo as he emptied the ashes into the toilet. On our way back to the car, he pondered going to therapy. But the truth was that he was no longer angry. Well, in the first, not angry enough to hit anyone. Destroying a reputation was something altogether else. He shared a video on social media of himself dropping the ashes into the toilet, along with an explanation. Later he pondered if the National Park Service would charge him for contaminating the latrine. If so, he'd cheerfully pay it if he never contacted her family. But he read in the media that there was a memorial service in Jacksonville without him or his daughters. He informed the girls that their mother had an accident while she was away and would not be coming back. They took it exactly as he intended. Fortunately, they had amazing kindergarten teachers who guided and supported them. The life insurance payout was satisfactory. Lisa had more insurance than Alex had expected. The insurance money made it easier for him to adjust his work schedule. He believed his daughters needed more fresh air, particularly at playgrounds, with a large number of children and attractive young mothers, many of whom were sympathetic to his tragic situation. He omitted the bit regarding Lisa's infidelity. He sought sympathy, not pity. The girl began to receive invitations to numerous play dates to which the mothers would invite their attractive single friends. Alex began to see the road forward. Alex never met Emily Brown in person, though they did talk on the phone from time to time. Here is the next story. Everything came to light by accident, as so things do. I'd come home from work feeling bad and was resting on the couch in the family room, eyes closed. I had just parked the automobile in the garage. It was a cool day, so I closed the garage door behind me after pulling in. My wife didn't realize I was home when she pulled into the driveway, since she had parked her car outside the garage. She and her sister Rachel entered through the front door and headed into the kitchen. They couldn't see me lying on the sofa because it faced the path from the door to the family room. I was going to get up and declare my presence, but when I lifted my head, I became so nauseous that I sank back down on the sofa till the feeling subsided. Meanwhile, I hardly heard their chat in the kitchen. I gathered that my wife had dropped by our house on her way to drop off Rachel to show her a new dress she had purchased for their yearly trip to Chicago, which they have done for the past 4 years. The two of them went on a weekend excursion from her hometown of Indianapolis to Chicago to see a show and art exhibits. Rachel's husband, Michael, and I would stay at home and watch the kids while they were away. We felt they worked hard caring for our preschool children during the year, and we could afford to give them a weekend off from their obligations. By the way, my wife's name is Laura, and I'm Tom. We have 2 children, Ethan 5 and Lucas 2. Laura and I had been married for 7 years, and I was a middle management at a large logistics firm. We were able to live quite comfortably on my salary. My wife is an extremely active woman who has worked hard to preserve her physique after 2 children. We have sex frequently and thoroughly enjoy each other. I thought we were the perfect pair and had the ideal marriage. Carr lives a few blocks away, and we spend much of our time together as families and friends. Rachel was a somewhat younger version of my wife, and they were almost inseparable. They have a 3-year-old daughter named Melissa. I lay there quietly waiting for my nausea to pass. I could hear Rachel raving about the dress my wife was showing her. Oh my goodness, it is a stunning dress. Did Tom see it? Does he know you're taking it on the trip? No, if he witnessed that he may become suspicious. So do not say anything. Lisa is going to really enjoy it. Who the hell is Lisa? I believed my sickness had subsided, but I still lay there waiting to hear more. Are you going to pack something for work? My wife asked. Who the hell is Mark? I pondered again. I've kept some special lingerie secret from Michael, which will definitely turn him on. Rachel said I have some special lingerie that Tom hasn't seen before. Lisa will undoubtedly be energized by this, good God. I assumed they were having affairs, and it seems like they know these guys well. The ramifications of what I was hearing left me surprised and shocked. Who were these individuals, and how long and how frequently had they met? As they continued to speak, my mind began to whirl from everything I had heard so far. Are you planning to take your birth control tablets again this year? Yes, Lisa. I only wanted 1 child. It's fortunate that he and Tom resemble Tom's mother. You can believe Lucas is a fitting picture of Tom. My God. My God. I felt as if I had been kicked in the gut, and my nausea was hitting me like a sledgehammer. I strained to hang on to my heating stomach. I wanted to puke so badly that bile was pushing its way up my throat. Fortunately, they decided to depart at that moment, allowing Laura to accompany Rachel home. I jumped up from the hook and dashed downstairs to find John as they closed the front door. I barely got to the toilet as I stuck my head in the toilet and let out the puke. It entered my mouth. Thankfully, the lid was on. I must have picked up everything, but I still got the dry heaves when I was done. It took me a second to understand that I needed proof of any infidelity and that I needed to leave the house before Laura returned urgently. I sprayed some air freshener in the restroom, grabbed my jacket and dashed into the garage. I got into my car, opened the garage door and drove down the street, closing the door behind me. I drove to a neighboring mall parking lot and sat in my car, contemplating what I was going to do. I considered calling my brother-in-law Michael and telling him what I'd heard, but my head was swirling in denial that Laura was unfaithful to me. Lucas might not be my son. I felt nauseous, but my rage was rising as I thought about a liaison with a guy named Lisa. What the hell am I going to tell Michael about Rachel and Mark? I needed legal help immediately, quickly to figure out what my choices were in the event that this ended in divorce. The girls were leaving on their trip and I had a lot of ground to cover. Using my cell phone for several days, I called my friend golfing partner, high school pal and personal lawyer Jerry Matthews, and asked his secretary, Helen, if I could see him as soon as possible. Helen recognized me and could tell from my voice that something was amiss, so she asked if I could come into his office in 15 minutes. I answered affirmatively and drove the few blocks swiftly. Helen took one glance at me and shouted, Tom, you look like hell. Helen, I just got some horrible news and I believe I'm coming down with something. Is he available now? I asked yes. Go right in, she said, wringing her hands in anxiety as she stared at me. I rushed up to the pastor, knocked once and entered Jerry's inner sanctuary. Jerry stood up as I entered and motioned me to a chair in front of his desk. What's going on, Tom? Jerry, you look dreadful. I've just been dealt a double whammy when I thought I'd be able to recuperate. What about the others at the moment? I have my doubts. Tell me about it, he asked as he sat down. First, let me warn you. I believe I'm coming down with something. And second, I believe I have a problem with Laura. I need some advice. Okay, the first should not be an issue. I've had my flu shot and any situation with Laura is unthinkable. I've known you both since you got married and I've never seen a more perfect couple. Tell me about it anyway. When I heard about Jerry that afternoon, I felt a connection. I can't imagine Rachel would do anything like that. And it's incredible if Laura purposefully created a child with another man. What do you believe you want to do? You desire a divorce, or do you believe you can work around the child and her infidelity at this time? I'm not sure how I could forgive her. I don't handle divorces, but I can put you in touch with an excellent divorce lawyer who will guide you through the process. If it is your wish, you'll need proof. Aside from what you've heard about adultery, particularly Lucas's paternity. Do you want me to call him and schedule an appointment? Please do. I suppose the magnitude of what I was about to do dawned on me. Jerry stared at me, sadly, as he buzzed, Helen, could you please get Sam Ridley on the phone? Oh God, no, I heard Helen exclaim, but Jerry was instantly linked. Sam, hello. It's Jerry. Do you have time to speak with a good buddy of mine regarding a situation he is having? Jerry paused to listen before turning to me. How about tomorrow morning at 9:00 in Sam's office, which is in the same building? It's getting late in the day now. Okay, I will be there. I nodded. I would recommend that you go home right now and try not to tell Laura there is an issue. This may not turn out to be what you expect and you may cause permanent damage to your marriage. You're correct. I need to control myself till I'm certain. Thank you for your help, Jerry. We stood and he grabbed my hand. I'm very sorry about this, Tom. You and Laura have always been my closest buddies. We had known one another for a long time. Your anguish is mine. Thank you again, Jerry. I'll get in touch and let you know what happens. Helen glanced at me with tears in her eyes on my way out. I'm so sorry. Tom, thank you, Helen. When I arrived home that evening, it was approximately my usual workday arrival time, so Laura didn't notice any difference in my arrival time. However, she immediately complimented on my attractiveness. Tom, honey, you look dreadful. Are you not feeling well? I gritted my teeth. I wanted to lash out at her to harm her in the same way that the prospect of her possible unfaithfulness upset me. However, I said I believe I'm coming down with something. Then I added viciously, though with a fake smile, I hope to be better in a few days, so you can still go on your outing. I could tell she was disturbed by the concept, but she immediately recovered. Oh, you probably have a little case of the flu. You should feel better by Friday. I hope so. Right now, I just want to lay down. So can I postpone dinner until later? Sure. Honey, go put on your jammies and go to bed. Why haven't you left work earlier? I tried, but I was too busy at work. I lied, take a couple of aspirin and I'll come up in a bit to check on you todays once a week. Childcare was enjoyable for the children. Rachel and I went shopping as usual when I spotted the most adorable pair of sandals, but they did not have my size, so I did not purchase anything. My head was numb from illness and despair as I walked upstairs to her bedroom. I didn't want to be near the kids, so I left them alone in the family room to play. I couldn't look at Lucas. Yet, oh God, what if he was not my son? What would I do? I remember Jen had gone on the outing 3 years before. She had prohibited intercourse between us the week before and week after the occurrence, claiming she had an infection. She purposely had sex with him in order to have his child. It was difficult to accept the extent of her betrayal. I didn't feel any better or more determined until the following morning. It was merely a 24-hour flu, but the sun's remembrance of what I had heard the previous afternoon made me unhappy. I looked at Laura, who was asleep next to me. She appeared so serene and innocent that I had difficulty seeing her with another man. But I realized I had to prepare myself for that possibility. I went into the bathroom, had a shower and got ready for another day at work. I had a cup of coffee and left the house before Laura arrived downstairs. I heard her upstairs with the children. They always got up early, but I couldn't face them yet. I ate breakfast at Denny's before heading to work early to focus on my task. Around 8:30 a.m. I went in and informed my supervisor that I would be taking a couple of hours of personal time that morning. He simply nodded, acknowledging it. How do you feel this morning? You didn't seem too good. When you left here early yesterday? He asked. I will be fine. Jack, that could take some time to get over that. I said he was talking about my illness, but my thoughts were on Laura. At 9:00 a.m., I arrived at Sam's door and he escorted me into his office before closing it as she departed. Sam had an informal arrangement of easy chairs around the low table, and when we greeted each other, he motioned for me to sit in one of them and took the one across from me in our job. He remarked, I find it easier to call my clients, since divorce is a highly emotional matter that necessitates a great deal of personal commitment. I have some decaf coffee if you're interested, so why don't you tell me about it? We'll take it from there. I poured myself a cup of his coffee and began my narrative. When I finished, he paused for a bit and inquired, do you love your wife? I believed I loved her more than life itself, but when I think about what she might have done to me, I feel cold, empty and enraged. It's as if she's someone I no longer know, the stranger. I keep hope that this is a horrible dream and I'll wake up and everything will be okay. I also have to consider the children in all of this. They are my primary concern, so I believe we have to find out for sure if she's committing adultery. If what you've heard is correct, we'll decide whether to proceed with the divorce. We will need to engage an investigator to look into what your wife is doing in Chicago this weekend. This could be costly, so I would propose involving your brother-in-law to split the costs. If this is accurate, it appears that we can accomplish two things at once pretty much, and I believe we need to conduct some DNA tests to determine the paternity of your children. I would propose that your brother-in-law do the same thing, but you can discuss it with him when you meet him. We need to schedule another appointment with him in attendance. I don't want to involve Michael before our ladies depart on their outing. I'm having problems relating to Laura, as I generally do. I could blame my unusual behavior on the sickness, But if I tell Michael and he starts acting strangely around Rachel, they might suspect something, okay? This makes sense. Could you please send me your wife's itinerary so that I can provide it to the investigator? I'll need the hotel's name and, if possible, a room number reserved. I believe they make the same reservation every year, so I'll get it for you, along with whatever itinerary they have. They fly in and take cabs or shuttle buses when they arrive, okay? That will make it easy to keep track of them. Next, you need to secure your finances. Do you want to understand what I mean by that? I guess I've got an idea. You must defend your possessions. We must presume right now that what you heard is correct. So anywhere your wife has access to joint accounts, credit cards, etc., consider transferring the beneficiaries of your insurance products to your children. It has been said that when a spouse learns of an approaching split, they run and clear out all accounts. If nothing goes wrong, you can always change it back. You can be as generous as you like with your joint bank account to help her get by until she gets worse or a new place to live. I'll leave that up to you. When you speak with your brother-in-law, you can also let him know that when we meet down to discuss a divorce settlement, we can ask for a share of both of your assets. I'll start honors today, but then I hope everything turns out to be a false alarm for you. But if what you've heard is correct, you should be able to win custody of your oldest son without difficulty. Okay. Thank you. Sam, I will get that itinerary for you by tomorrow. After leaving Sam's office, I went straight to the bank and closed all of our joint savings and CB accounts, transferring the funds to an account in my name only. I left €1 in our joint checking account and shifted the remainder to my savings account. I then phoned my stockbroker and transferred our funds to my personal account. He was a little anxious about what that meant, but I didn't explain it. I wanted to deactivate our credit cards, but I was concerned that if a charge was deemed mine while they were in Chicago, it might alert them. So I decided to wait to hear from the investigator. Then I returned to the office and concentrated on my job until it was time to leave. I couldn't stomach my meal. I wasn't sure if it was the flu's residual effects or my wife's ideas. Images of her having sex with another guy flashed through my head, and my anger and stress levels rose. I knew I needed to keep myself under control. When I arrived home that evening, I pretended to be unwell all the time. Laura appeared concerned. Why didn't you stay at home today? You should not have gone to work at all. I did not want to give it to you or the kids. If you received it, you may be unable to attend your outing with Rachel this weekend. I said, waiting for a response. You could be correct. Maybe you should sleep in the guest room tonight until you're feeling better. I suggested making sure our weekend plans with her partner were disrupted. It was going to be really tough to resist from telling her I suspected anything for the next few days. Instead of watching TV, I ate some food. I went to the computer and checked my email. While I was there, I checked to see what emails she was receiving on her account and discovered she had changed her password. I looked around for a while and discovered a new password, machine's name and birth date. When I opened it, I hit the jackpot, a series of emails from someone with the username on William. I copied them into a separate file to print. Later I read a few to confirm what I was hoping for. No indication of her cheating. They must have communicated to plan this weekend. They might be on the phone when I'm at work too. The majority of their plans had been determined before this, so I didn't expect to discover much more. If I tapped the phone in my lips, the emails would serve as a sufficient written record of their plans. Now I'd have to wait the next day. I faxed a copy of the itinerary to Sam and attempted to continue working as usual, but it was really difficult. My supervisor and secretary were aware that something was wrong, but they only asked whether I was still sick. I merely told them it was difficult to shake and carried on working. I printed off Laura's emails for further information, and after reading them and mailing copies to Sam, I learned that they had been gathering for this annual outing for years, with Lisa and Mark registered in one room and Laura and Rachel in an adjoining one. This allowed the lovers to share a room while remaining intimate. They reserved the same rooms every year, so I passed on the room numbers to Sam as requested. I also discovered that Lisa and Mark were married and resided in Milwaukee. They attended the annual Shuckaville boat show at the same time each year, leaving their wives at home to care for the children. Finally, it was Friday. Laura and Rachel planned to go to the airport around midday and leave it there until they returned. On Sunday, I got up and went downstairs to the kitchen. Laura was there making coffee and preparing a bacon and egg brunch. Normally I just ate cereal, so I assumed this was something special. This morning, I would want to serve you a wonderful breakfast anyway before I leave. I worry about you haven't been eating properly all week. That must be really holding on. I'm sorry we haven't been intimate this week, and I appreciate your efforts to protect me and the children. I greatly appreciate it. When I return on Sunday, you should be feeling better, and I will express my gratitude then. Laura stated thanks, John. I said I'd be looking forward to it and kissed her on the cheek. She appeared happy. Don't forget to return home by noon today, and you'll need to begin your babysitting chores so we can travel to the airport. No, I didn't forget. I growled back temporarily, forgetting the need to maintain control, but the weight of my thoughts about what she intended to do this weekend was getting to me. What is the problem? Tell me, you angry at me for some reason? No, I was simply clearing my throat. There must have been some phlegm, I said, smiling innocently. She stared at me strangely for a while, but I kept my face calm and attentive. As she resumed her conversation after breakfast, I put on my suit jacket, grabbed my briefcase and went to the garage. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye before leaving? She inquired, gazing at me. Oddly again, I knew I needed to go all out or she'd suspect something. So I spun around, dropped the briefcase, took her into my arms and kissed her on the lips. My stomach was queasy, but I ignored it as I tried to persuade her of my unwavering love and loyalty. It must have worked, because when I stepped away, she said, "Wow, honey, maybe you want to stay at home this morning and we'll have our Sunday sex today." I'd enjoy that. I would like to, sweetheart, but if I'm going to take a half day off, I have to get to work. I responded. I gave her another kiss on the cheek. I grabbed my briefcase again and headed to the garage. She was smiling when I left, so I hope she is no longer suspicious. If she wanted to be the lovely wife, I could play the loving husband for a little longer. I got home from work about noon and Jan had lunch ready for me. I ate and chatted with her as she gathered her belongings at the door. I hope you girls will behave themselves, I informed her as jovially as I could. We always do, honey, but there are always some attractive hunks to gaze at. She joked back, as long as it's only gazing. I responded, but with a serious tone. You know it would kill me if you decided to mess around. I don't think I could handle it. Laura looked stunned for a moment before smiling. You know, Tom, I've always been faithful to you, and that will not change. I know, but you're an attractive woman who gets touched on periodically, and I know that a stay-at-home mom becomes intelligent, I said, looking at her suddenly pale face. She hugged me, and as Rachel jumped up front to announce her presence, she gave me a short kiss on the lips before turning away. I thought I noticed a right turn as I scooped up her bags and followed her out the door to Rachel's car. Minutes later, I saw the automobile drive down the street and we waved goodbye, maybe for the final time after feeding the kids. I called Michael and said I'd be over in a minute. He confirmed that he would be there, so I gathered the kids and drove the few blocks to his house, bringing a copy of Jan's emails with me when I arrived. Michael had just finished feeding Melissa. He greeted me warmly as I entered with Ethan and Lucas. Hello everyone, he greeted us. Come into the family room and we'll watch a DVD with the children. I'm not going to stay long, but we need to talk. Let the kids play in the family room. He looked at me perplexed and ushered the kids into the family room. What up? So what do you have there? He inquired, pointing to the stack of emails I held in my hand. These are for you to read, I informed him as we sat at the kitchen table. First, this certain one I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. I have something very awful to tell you. So try to remain cool. What is the matter? Are you terminal or something? No, I wish it were. But it might end marriages. Michael grew pale and remained silent as I spoke to him. I told him about the conversation I had overheard between our spouses a few days earlier, and then gave him the emails to read. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. He kept stating, as he reviewed the emails, which corroborated what I had told him. I realized how heartbreaking this was for him, because I knew he adored Laura as much as I do. January. When he finished reading, he cried and lowered his head to the table. Following that, I informed him about Sam and the Chicago investigator, what I'd done thus far with our finances, and that I was on my way to a clinic in town to have samples taken from the kids and myself in order to determine paternity by DNA. I asked if he wanted to go with me. He was shocked. Up until that point, he had not considered the possibility that Melissa was not his daughter. He abruptly sprang up and dashed into the restroom, and I heard him bringing up his lunch in the dry heaves that followed, which was similar to my reaction many days previously, but mine was accompanied by the flu, so I'm not sure what triggered my reaction. Now I knew after calming down, he stated he'd join us. He didn't seem well as we gathered the kids and loaded them into our car for the ride to the clinic. They were quite professional and simply used swabs to collect saliva from each of us. I asked them to also take a blood test on my children so that I could keep track of our blood types. They said they'd email us the results by following Wednesday. After we left the facility, we traveled to Michael's bank where he made the necessary changes to his accounts. He decided to call his broker and insurance agent from his house phone. On the way back, I inquired if he wanted to come to our place for the weekend. I told him I didn't believe you should be alone. He paused for a moment and said all right, but asked to stop by his house to pick up a few items for a weekend stay. After that, we drove back home. The kids had no idea what we were going through. I was relieved that their lives will soon be interrupted, and we should strive to keep them uninformed for as long as possible. Michael and I sat in the kitchen and discussed what we were going to do with our spouses. After years of betrayal, we decided to stay quiet after they returned and await the investigators' findings and the results of the DNA testing before deciding our next step. I knew we'd have to have some sex with our spouses to clear up any concerns, but I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to respond to Laura and develop an erection. Michael mentioned that you might have the same problem, but he stated he had some Viagra samples at home. His doctor had prescribed him for an issue he experienced a few months back. This should do the trick. I promised him I'd pick up a couple when I left him and Melissa off at their house on Sunday. We had a quiet weekend together every evening. Jen and Rachel called and we pretended to be delighted to hear from them. They were glad Michael and the kids were spending the weekend together. Jen mentioned that it would be excellent to plan for the next year or two. I assumed yes, there would be a next year. Sunday afternoon, before they arrived home, I drove Michael and Melissa home and picked up a few Viagra pills. Then I went back home to wait until January, around 400 p.m. I heard a honk from the front and walked up to assist Janine with her bags. She was all smiles and appeared really pleased to see me. I reasoned, what the hell? If she can act pleased, I can act happy as well and give a comparable reply. The kids were delighted to see their mother and she spent a significant amount of time with them. While I brought her luggage into our bedroom and emptied them, I observed a bag of her filthy laundry, largely her own. I held my breath as I examined the crotch of 2 pairs of panties, but there was no obvious trace of sperm. I didn't think this signified anything, because if she had taken them off for sex after returning to her room in the evening, she might not have put them back on. I sighed slowly and rejoined my family. We went out to eat as a family that evening. Later, after the kids were in bed, she approached me in the family room and took my hand, taking me up to her room. "Why don't you undress?" She questioned me with a beautiful smile before turning and going into the bathroom. When she returned, I pretended I was already asleep. Nothing was happening to her. I began to plot vengeance if I received the evidence from the investigator, as I hoped. The next morning I received a call from Sam at work, who confirmed that the investigator had obtained video and photographic images of Laura with Lisa and Rachel with Mark. He would finish his report and deliver it to Sam's office along with copies of the filming by Wednesday. It sounded like Wednesday might be a big day. I felt unwell again, but this time it wasn't because of the flu. He then said he wanted to meet with Michael and me to discuss our plans. I assured him that I would phone Michael and get back to him. I called Michael at work and explained what Sam had informed me about the investigator's report and his request for a meeting. I could hear Michael crying, and it took him a little bit to free himself from the control. Finally, we decided that we'd acquire the DNA test results on Wednesday and meet with Sam Thursday morning. I contacted Sam back and scheduled Thursday for €9 and meet with him. Over the week, Jen did not offer any more sex and I didn't want to press it. Michael and I met in Sam's office off on Thursday morning, and it appeared like he was ready to give a video presentation, as there was a TV set up in the alcove near his desk. We said nothing after shaking hands anyway. Just the chairs in front of the TV, and you said you'd display it without sound, unless we wanted to listen. We both agreed to watch the initial viewing without sound, with no additional conversation. He switched on the television and began the video. The camera must have been positioned up high above the bed. As we looked down and seen a naked man I didn't recognize get onto the bed and lie on his back. He didn't appear any larger than me. The sharpness of the image suggested that the camera must have been highly expensive. A few moments later, a woman dressed in a black short nightie stepped onto the bed and straddled his legs. I immediately knew her as January. I was immediately nauseated and dashed into Sam's restroom to abandon my breakfast. I saw it was the same negligee she had worn for her sex session on Sunday evening. Sam had stopped the tape and started after I returned. Jen then fell on her back on the bed and he mounted her in the missionary position. Sam abruptly interrupted the audio and the sound of their heavy breathing filled the room. Jen could be heard gasping. "I'm really thrilled. We could do this once a year. Lisa, if I couldn't let my hair down once, I'd go mad at home. I love my husband, but I don't believe he would respect me if I did. I do these things with you." "I feel the same way." Lisa gasped back. Sam said, "I thought you should hear that," as he turned off the audio. We continue to watch as they go through a couple more orgasms, and then Sam plays another DVD and we see Rachel and her boyfriend go through almost the identical scenario until it is ended. Sam turned off the television and turned to face us. "What is your pleasure? Gentlemen, do you wish to proceed with the divorce, Sam? We've discussed it and we want you to go ahead and prepare the papers. But don't serve them until we tell you. We also want Lisa and Mark's full names and addresses. We'd like to provide their wives copies of the report and the video." "Okay. I will get the paperwork started today." The investigator's written report included the names and addresses of your wife's boyfriends. I'll send you copies before you go, as well as a copy of the video to use as you choose. So what about your children's paternity? We stopped at the clinic on our way over to get the DNA report. I have one additional copy for you. Lucas isn't my son. Sorry to say, but I'd like to find a way to adopt him. You'll need the father's approval to accomplish it. I understand, but can we use some leverage to force him to sign away his paternal rights to Lucas? I was considering filing a lawsuit against my wife's lover to obtain child support for the 3 years since his birth. If you agree to allow me to adopt, he will not be liable for future child support. That would work. You could even sue them for alienation of affection. Also use that as a bargaining tool. I believe we would prefer to pursue such possibilities. Have you approached your wives with any of this yet? Sam asked. No, we plan to do it tonight. We are getting together for dinner, all right. Here are copies of the report and video. I will deal with this matter as you have instructed. I'm so sorry that happened. After leaving Sam's office, we went to an audio-video store and made extra copies of the movie. I picked up a wiretap recorder while I was there, which I planned to install that weekend. We then went to King to make extra copies of the report. We ordered huge shipping envelopes, addressed them to Lisa and Mark's wives, and express shipped them overnight to their Milwaukee homes. Each envelope contained a small handwritten message that explained who we were and how to contact us, or Sam, if necessary, back at work. I told my supervisor that I was going to take a few days off, starting the next day to take care of some problems at home. My work was up to date and my staff knew how to contact me while I was away, so he had no problem with my request while at work the rest of the day. I called our credit card providers to cancel out joint cards, opening one in my name exclusively. Then I canceled Jane's self-owned and checked her AOL email account from my workplace computer. I discovered one email to Lisa from Monday morning, stating that she had arrived home safely and was looking forward to next year. Lisa did not respond. For the remainder of the day, I spent time putting bits of the video and images from the report into my computer and created a web page for it. I included other information, such as times and dates, as well as a copy of the report online and the children's DNA tests. When I was finished, I stored the results in a secure file and left for the day. When I arrived home, Michael, Rachel, and Melissa were already present. After pouring drinks for everyone, Michael and I moved into the family room, leaving our wives in the kitchen to prepare dinner. Is everything ready? Michael asked. I only need to load one of the videos into the player and we'll be set after dinner. I stood up, took a copy of the video from my briefcase and inserted it into the DVD player. I returned and sat down, raising my glass to Michael. He returned the salute. Following a pleasant family dinner, we moved to the family room after sending the kids into a bedroom to watch their favorite show, Sponge Michael SquarePants. I said that I had a film to show everyone. The spouses stared at me both expectantly and perplexed. This isn't dirty, is it? Tom inquired. You promised me you wouldn't bring any X-rated items into this house. Honey, it's a family issue. It is informative and demonstrates how a family may be ruined. I said. She only nodded skeptically as I began to play the video. The first bit about the bed in the middle of the room appeared, followed by a picture of a new Lisa going on the bed. Jen had not recognized the man when she exploded. You told me it was X-rated. I told you it was educational, I said. Then Jen appeared on the screen. Oh my God. Oh my God. She yelled. How did you get them? She had turned as white as paste as we saw her get on the bed. Take Lisa at her mouth and bring on the climax. Jen and Carla both wailed and cried. Turn it off. Turn it off. I do not want to watch. Rachel cried. Don't worry, Rachel. It's only just started. Michael yelled at his wife. We have a video of you both. They were both shocked, screaming and wailing. The kids had come racing to see what was wrong, but we had to send them back to their bedrooms before they saw anything. Jen finally let out a gasp. Please turn it off. Tom, please. We need to talk. I compassionately switched it off, leaving them sobbing and hiding their tear-stained faces in shame. Tell us about it. Girls, tell us why you intended to betray us like that. We trusted you and that trust is now gone. How do you intend to re-establish our trust? You broke your marriage vows. How will you turn for that? I do not want to hear any. I apologize, or I could explain, because nothing you can say will alleviate the agony you've caused us. We only want to know how you intend to regain our faith or our marriages end and we get divorced with these films. We will obtain custody of the children while providing you with the bare minimum of financial gratification. So, if you believe your marriages are worth surviving, tell us how you intend to avoid losing trust in them. I do not know. I do not know. Jen wailed, looking at me beseeching, my love. I assumed it was simply an innocent flirtation once per year. No one would get wounded. I'm your love. Am I, this immature side, with someone who professes to love her husband, decide to go out and get impregnated by another man? Tell me, my darling. Oh God, you understand. Jen yelled and sobbed again. Rachel was still sobbing, but she looked at her sister with compassion. Michael, I advise you, take Rachel and Melissa home and devise your own marriage salvation plan. Jen and I have a lot more to work out than you do. Jen remained huddled on the sofa in a fetal position, screaming and wailing in intense sorrow as I saw Michael and his family approach the door. Rachel looked away from me as she departed, her tear-stained face covered in makeup and mascara. I didn't even recognize her, as I gave Michael a brotherly hug and left. I returned to the family room and chased the kids back into the bedroom. They were becoming anxious that something was severely wrong in our family. So I decided to take them over to my parents for the night. We're excited to go. The grandparents usually treated them which they liked. Spending the night would be a great occasion. I went back into the family room and informed Jen that I was taking the kids to my parents for the night. I'll be back in approximately half an hour, so you have that time to decide what you do to make up for your infidelity or whether you believe this marriage with access to the kids is worth it. The only reason I'm considering letting you stay for a bit is because of the kids. I haven't thought about Lucas as of now. He's my son. In terms of the future, I'm not sure if they both need a mother, and you're still the best candidate for the job right now. I'll determine whether I want to divorce. If you protest, I'll produce a video. The DNA test results and investigators' findings are made public, including to your parents and siblings in our church community. You'll no longer live in this community. Think about it. She didn't acknowledge me and kept sobbing even louder. I packed the kids in their jammies and toothbrushes and drove them to my parents. They lived about 15 minutes away and were shocked to see us, but I explained that Jen and I like a little quiet. My father winked at me and said, "We understand. Son, take as long as you like. You don't look very well, though I will be okay, Dad." When I got back home, the house was quiet. She wasn't in the family room, so I went to her bedroom. I discovered her there, gathering her personal stuff and transporting them to the guest room. I just glanced at her and replied, "Well," she looked like death warmed over and was still sobbing as she tried to gasp out this marriage. "You and my children are more important to me than anything in the world. I'm not going to apologize or explain what I did, because you requested me not to, why I allowed myself to become pregnant by him. I can't even explain it to myself. I will stay if you allow me. I recognize I need to leave our marriage bed until you decide. You want me back. I won't keep my body from. You can have me whenever you want. I know you can take revenge on me by sleeping with someone else, and I cannot stop you. It will hurt me just as much as I have harmed you. I'll do whatever you desire, agree to any terms you want in order to stay here with you and your children. I recognize that if I decided to get divorced, it would be the end of me. I thank you for providing me the opportunity to redeem myself." That was quite the speech. January, now shut up and listen. You might not realize the conditions. I'll have to let you stay here and you may eventually wish to go, but I desire vengeance so badly that I can taste it. I've been in agony since I discovered the truth only 10 days ago. However, your suffering may last for years. I hope you think I have time. I will tell you my terms tomorrow." I told her, then turned and returned downstairs later alone in bed. I could hear her sobbing throughout the night in the guest room. I wanted to go console her, but thinking about what she had done made me so angry that I couldn't bring myself to go to her. She would have to complete her atonement the next morning. I awoke early, showered and dressed casually. It was Saturday and we were having relatives around today, but I wanted to sit down and write out the terms of our new marriage contract in black and white so that I could receive John's approval. When she got up, I sat in the kitchen for nearly an hour, writing, crossing out, and eventually reaching a final draft. I waited until 10:00 before going up and waking January. I invited her to join me downstairs in the kitchen after she had finished cleaning up. She stared at me and nodded, so I left. I heard the shower start soon after, and within half an hour she was sitting at the kitchen table with me. I want you to know that I have seriously considered this and have tried not to allow my need for vengeance overtake me and led me to do anything I would regret. I'm not sure if I still love you, but I sincerely surely hope you stay the course so I can find out I really miss my former wife. She glanced at me with a feeble smile and a hopeful expression. Oh, Tom, I still want to be your wife again and put everything behind us, but I realize I have a lot to make up for. Yes, you do. And here's what you'll have to do to compensate for it. Then I began reading over my list of conditions. First, you will never speak with another man alone again. I hope that means you won't be alone with the pizza deli person or the meter reader. Second, there will be no more solo visits to anywhere. I do not care if your mother is dying and you want to see her. If I am not available to accompany you or someone I trust, you do not go. Third, you shall notify me every time you leave the house, including where you are going and how long you will be gone, the purpose of the journey. Please notify me when you return home. Fourth, you won't have credit cards or a cell phone. I've already canceled those. Fifth, you will make yourself available for sex rather than for love 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I tell you to do something in bed, there will be no holding back. You will do it. If you can help, Lisa, you can do it for me. Do you get that? Yes, I do understand. I've always wanted to do it to you, but I was frightened of losing your respect. Well, I have lost all respect for you. Was it worthwhile? She sobbed. This condition is necessary because of what you did to me also. Sixth, you'll always treat me with respect. You'll be a joyful, obedient wife and mother. Seventh, you will notify me every time you speak or communicate with a man, whether on the phone, in a chat room, or by email. I will have ways to check this, so please be truthful and honest with me. 8. You will sign adoption paperwork allowing me to adopt if I choose to. 9th, you will communicate with Rachel in person or by other means for no more than 1 hour every week. I'm not sure who influenced your affair, but I suspect it was you, Michael Dees, that we need to keep you two apart. 10th, you will be given a clothing stipend, but any new clothes you purchase will require my approval. I will not let you spend the money I work for on sexy attire for a lover. That's another sore point for me, and that's about it. Do you have any comments or concerns about these terms? Punishment for violating any of these requirements will be proportionate to the transgression. None. I accept them without reservation. They are more tolerant than I would have been. Our role were reversed. Think you'll have to get Sean's natural father to sign off on too. I am aware of this, and we are attempting to obtain the necessary signature. You should understand that your lover and Rachel are not getting off easy on this. Copies of the investigator's report on the video CD have been provided to their wives. We will also sue them for alienation of affection. If your friend does not consent to the adoption, he will be sued for both back and future child support. I believe you will sign the documents and agree not to try to see or contact Lucas until after his 21st birthday. Oh my God, you will ruin him. Do you still have feelings for him? Furthermore, you should have considered the long-term consequences of your relationship with him and the birth of his child. She closed her eyes. It was just so simple. We didn't consider about getting caught, but you did. I had a nasty dream dreaming about Jane and Lisa. It appeared that they were laughing at me while having sex. I awakened in a rage. My clothes soaked from the sweat that flowed off me. I must have made a noise because Jane came hurrying up and asked, "Are you okay?" I was still in a wrath. I reacted gruffly. "Yes, I am all right. Leave me alone. I apologize." She said this as she exited the room the next morning. I got up, washed, prepared for an early church service, and knocked on Jane's door. I stated that we would leave for church in 1 hour. Then I went and started getting the kids ready. We were all prepared to leave on time and resume our daily schedule, as is customary after church. We went to IHOP for breakfast. Then we returned home for a quiet afternoon. I watched the football game. Jem worked on a crossword puzzle and the kids played with their toys. The only thing out of the ordinary was when I went out to the garage at halftime to install the wiretap recorder. I would now be able to monitor Jem when I wasn't at home. Another unusual occurrence was a phone call I received from his wife that afternoon. "Tom, I want to thank you for the package you sent me. It was quite informative and I intend to use it in divorce proceedings against my husband. Is once a year adultery enough grounds?" I asked. It wasn't just once a year. We've been playing for years. I now have documentation to dump him and make him pay. Thank you. Could you do something for me in exchange? Sure. Give it a name. I'd like to collect the sample from your husband for DNA testing. I have a pattern issue here. Whatever you submit must be identified or validated as coming from your husband. Consider it finished. Give me a few days. Thanks so much. Thank you. You are aware that my husband's friend Mark will also be appearing in court for divorce, don't you? He was playing about the same time as my husband. No, I had not heard that. Thank you for this information. Then he signed off. I went in search of Jen and found her in the family room with the kids. She glanced at me quizzically. She knew she shouldn't have asked who had called, but I chose to inform her and inflict her additional grief over her lover who was Lisa's wife. She is divorcing him. Mark's wife is also divorcing him. She turned pale and hung her head. It appears that I proceeded. They were full and errors in the documents I delivered them provided their wives with enough evidence to dump them. It will be quite pricey for them. They'll be working the rest of their wives to compensate for their mistakes with their lawyers. Lisa is in serious jeopardy due to my paternity action against him. Jane instantly leapt up and hurried out of the room, sobbing. Later she returned and apologized for leaving so quickly. It was just that I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility for ending to other marriages and potentially a third. It wasn't because I harbored affections for him. I simply gazed at her. I didn't think anything further needed to be stated. So we began a period of atonement. In order to better monitor Jane's whereabouts and communications, I purchased an audio recorder that captured voice-activated signals from small transmitters that concealed. I hid the recorder in the garage alongside the phone tape recorder and 3 transmitters throughout the home my visitors might activate them. It wasn't full coverage, but I believed it was enough to keep track of her. Our days dragged on and I could tell she was feeling the strain of having to follow my rules. Every day she appeared more haggard and drawn. It must have been difficult for me too, because my boss and secretary asked me to consult a doctor. They informed me that the fluid from earlier was hanging on for too long and that I should be tested for walking pneumonia. I understood what the problem was: mental illness. Our love life was purely for sex. There was no love in it. She responded to my violent desire to injure her, sometimes without complaint. I kept monitoring my recording devices every evening when I got home from work, but it was clear she wasn't speaking with anyone, as she normally would. She called me punctually every time she had to leave the house and supported as my requirements demanded. But the toll of being so severely limited bothered me. I hadn't understood how restricting they were or how loveless our marriage was. Now I realized we needed a change by the end of the first 30 days. We were both so anxious that we had a difficult time living together. Even the children noticed the strain which was harming them. They seemed strangely quiet and apprehensive. They looked at us with anxiety on their faces. They had a feeling their world was going to explode, and they were correct. Watching them and Jane made me cry. My circumstances and want for revenge were ruining the marriage and family I was attempting to salvage. Finally, on a Sunday afternoon when the kids were playing in the yard, I grabbed Jane's hand and brought her into the family room. "We need to talk." She seemed nervous as I pushed her down onto the sofa next to me. I handed her a manila envelope. She looked at me for a time expressionless. before breaking down and crying. I was reflecting on the rest of our life. I love you, Jane, but I can't go on like this. I'm seeing you die a little each day, and I realized I can't keep on like this. The youngsters are also hurting. I've given it a lot of thought over the last few days, trying to appraise my sentiments towards you. For a long period I felt empty, and I don't think I love you anymore. I simply wanted to keep going for the sake of the kids. However, it is becoming increasingly clear that a split is imminent. I can't forgive you or get over your infidelity, and especially since Lucas is not my son. I want you to know that while I may never be able to forget what you did, I can attempt to forgive you. When I took the decision to forgive you, I felt much better about myself. The cause was my desire for self-preservation. I'm not sure whether that makes sense, but I hope it does. Oh, Tom, I believe I understand your rationale, and I know it was difficult to make your decision. I really love you. I wanted you back with me. I suppose it's what it is, and I have to live with it. Tom left the house the next morning, and I had a terrible time explaining to the kids that Mommy and Daddy needed to be apart. However, explaining to the rest of the family was not difficult. Her parents, particularly her mother, were quite hostile. We made it work somehow. Lisa is divorced and now lives in a modest condominium. He will pay his wife for the rest of his life, and she has no intention of marrying again. Rachel and Michael stayed married, but it was a loveless marriage. Every time I visit them at their home, I can sense the tension in the air. It's like a ticking time bomb. After much deliberation, Michael decided to give their relationship another shot and went to marriage counseling with Rachel. I'm not sure whether that will help. I never considered that for myself. I adopted John like a son. I couldn't bring myself to beg him not to address me as his father. I was his father since he was born. I never told him that he wasn't my son. I got divorced 5 months later, and as for our settlement, I didn't offer Laura anything. She never asked for anything. I granted her visitation rights. Laura began dating after a year, and 5 years later she married. I was invited, but I decided to let the kids attend. I never got married or dated again. For me, the experience was sufficient. I could not afford to go through that again. You may call me a coward, but it is preferable to be alone and love your children than to marry again and risk losing everything. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.